The age of noise. We are not living in the age of information. We are living in the age of noise. Information implies clarity. It suggests understanding, learning, and progress. Noise suggests something very different: constant sound without meaning, endless signals without direction, and movement without purpose. The modern world hums with voices at every moment. Phones vibrate. Screens refresh. Opinions appear before questions are even fully formed. The result is a strange contradiction. Never in history have people had access to so much knowledge, yet rarely has understanding felt so distant. Noise is not simply sound. It is mental pressure. It is the constant demand for attention, reaction, and opinion. It fills the spaces where reflection once lived. In this environment, silence feels uncomfortable, even suspicious. Pausing to think feels like falling behind. And speaking loudly, quickly, and confidently has become the default way to exist. This is the age of noise, where volume is confused with value and certainty is mistaken for truth. The rise of noise did not happen overnight. It arrived slowly, disguised as progress. New technologies promised connection. Social platforms promised community. Instant communication promised efficiency. And for a time, these promises felt real. Voices that were once ignored found space. Stories that were once hidden were finally told. Expression became accessible to anyone with a device and a signal. But accessibility came with a cost. When everyone gained the ability to speak at once, listening became rare. Thoughtful conversation was replaced by constant broadcasting. The goal shifted quietly but decisively, from understanding others to being noticed. From careful expression to immediate reaction. Noise became the currency of relevance. In earlier times, ideas had to travel slowly. They were filtered through editors, scholars, and long-form discussion. That slowness created friction, but it also created depth. Arguments were tested. Evidence mattered. Time forced reflection. In the modern world, friction is treated as failure. Speed is rewarded. The faster an opinion appears, the more valuable it seems. A reaction posted in seconds feels more important than a conclusion reached in days. And so, noise thrives while patience disappears. This constant stream of sound changes how people think. When the mind is never allowed to rest, it loses its ability to focus. When attention is constantly interrupted, depth becomes difficult. The brain adapts by skimming rather than studying, reacting rather than reasoning. Over time, thinking becomes shallow not because people are incapable of depth, but because the environment discourages it. Noise trains the mind to respond emotionally. Outrage spreads faster than understanding. Fear spreads faster than facts. Confidence spreads faster than truth. And once emotions take control, logic struggles to catch up. One of the most powerful effects of noise is the illusion of knowledge. People feel informed simply because they are exposed to information. Headlines are read, clips are watched, and summaries are absorbed. But exposure is not understanding. Knowing fragments is not the same as knowing context. Yet in the age of noise, fragments are enough to form opinions, and those opinions are often expressed with absolute certainty. This creates a dangerous imbalance. Confidence grows faster than comprehension. People speak loudly about things they barely understand, not because they are dishonest, but because the system rewards certainty. Admitting uncertainty feels like weakness. Saying, "I don't know," feels like losing. And so, many choose volume over honesty. The loudest voices often rise to the top, not because they are correct, but because they are simple. Noise favors clarity without accuracy. Complex truths are uncomfortable. They require effort, nuance, and patience. Simple opinions feel clean and satisfying. They fit into short sentences. They provoke immediate reactions. In a noisy environment, simplicity wins, even when it is wrong. This is how opinions begin to feel like facts. Repetition creates familiarity. Familiarity creates comfort. And comfort is often mistaken for truth. When the same opinion appears again and again, expressed by different voices with the same confidence, the brain begins to accept it as reality. Questioning it feels unnecessary, even disruptive. Noise does not need to prove itself. It only needs to be present everywhere. Another defining feature of the age of noise is urgency. Everything feels immediate. Everything feels important. Every issue is framed as a crisis. This constant state of urgency leaves no room for reflection. When everything demands attention, nothing receives it fully. Urgency pressures people to choose sides quickly. It discourages hesitation. It punishes neutrality. In this environment, taking time to understand an issue is seen as avoidance. Waiting for facts is seen as indifference. Silence is interpreted as complicity. The result is a culture of instant alignment. People adopt opinions not because they have examined them, but because they feel forced to respond. Noise creates the illusion that not reacting is the same as not caring. Over time, this constant reaction reshapes identity. Opinions become personal. Beliefs become tied to self-worth. Challenging an idea feels like attacking a person. Discussions turn into battles. Listening becomes rare because listening requires openness, and openness feels dangerous in a noisy world. Noise thrives on conflict. It keeps attention high and emotions engaged. Calm discussion does not generate the same energy. Agreement does not spread as fast as outrage. And so, the environment slowly selects for confrontation over understanding. In the age of noise, being loud feels like being alive. Silence, by contrast, feels uncomfortable. It creates space for doubt. It allows uncomfortable questions to surface. It forces reflection. But reflection does not trend. It does not generate clicks or reactions. It does not reward the ego. So silence is avoided. This avoidance comes at a cost. Without silence, there is no depth. Without depth, there is no wisdom. Without wisdom, knowledge becomes fragile. Facts lose their grounding. Opinions float freely, untethered from reality. Noise also distorts perception of importance. Trivial issues are inflated. Serious issues are oversimplified. The constant stream of content flattens everything into the same level of urgency. This makes it difficult to distinguish what truly matters from what is simply loud. Over time, people become exhausted. The mind cannot remain in a constant state of alert. Yet stepping away feels risky, as if missing out means losing control. And so, many remain plugged in, overwhelmed, yet unable to disconnect. This exhaustion creates vulnerability. Tired minds are easier to influence. When people are overwhelmed, they seek certainty. They gravitate toward voices that sound confident and decisive. Noise exploits this. It offers simple answers to complex problems. It replaces curiosity with conviction. And in doing so, it pushes facts further into the background. The age of noise does not eliminate truth. It buries it. Truth still exists, but it requires effort to find. It requires patience to hear. It requires humility to accept. In a world that rewards speed and confidence, these qualities feel rare. Yet they are more necessary than ever. Understanding the age of noise is the first step toward navigating it. Recognizing how volume shapes belief allows space for awareness. Awareness creates distance. And distance makes thinking possible again. The goal is not to escape noise completely. That is impossible. The goal is to learn how to exist within it without being consumed by it. To recognize when sound replaces substance. To pause when reaction feels automatic. To value clarity over certainty. Because in a world where everyone is shouting, the most powerful act is not to shout louder, but to think more deeply. This is the age of noise. And understanding it is the beginning of learning how to hear the truth beneath it. Why being right feels better than being honest. Being right feels good. It feels clean, satisfying, and stabilizing. It offers a sense of control in a world that often feels unpredictable. When someone believes they are right, uncertainty disappears. Doubt fades. Questions no longer linger. For a moment, everything makes sense. Honesty, on the other hand, is uncomfortable. Honesty requires admitting gaps in knowledge. It demands uncertainty. It asks people to sit with questions that do not have immediate answers. In a culture shaped by noise and urgency, honesty feels slow, vulnerable, and risky. Being right feels powerful. Being honest feels exposed. This difference explains more about modern discourse than most people realize. In the age of noise, people do not seek truth as much as they seek reassurance. And reassurance comes more easily from certainty than from honesty. The human mind is not wired to prioritize truth above all else. It is wired to protect identity, reduce discomfort, and maintain a sense of belonging. When beliefs become tied to identity, being wrong no longer feels like a simple mistake. It feels like a threat. To admit error is to admit weakness. To admit uncertainty is to risk losing authority. And in a world that rewards confidence, these admissions feel costly. This is why being right often matters more than being honest. From an early age, people learn that correctness brings approval. In classrooms, answers are rewarded, not questions. Certainty is praised. Doubt is treated as confusion. Over time, this creates a subtle association: knowing feels safe, not knowing feels shameful. That association does not disappear with age. It follows people into adulthood, shaping how they interact with information, disagreement, and evidence. When challenged, many do not ask, "Is this true?" They ask, "What does this say about me?" If being wrong threatens self-image, honesty becomes optional. This psychological dynamic explains why facts often lose to opinions. Facts are indifferent. They do not care how someone feels. They do not protect identity. They simply exist. Opinions, by contrast, personal. They carry emotional investment. They offer belonging to groups, movements, and communities. To let go of an opinion can feel like losing a part of oneself. Noise amplifies this effect. Public platforms turn private beliefs into public performances. Once an opinion is shared, it becomes attached to reputation. Changing it later feels like admitting failure in front of an audience. The larger the audience, the harder honesty becomes. This is why people double down instead of reconsidering. It is often easier to defend a weak belief loudly than to abandon it quietly. Confidence masks discomfort. Being right provides emotional relief. It closes questions. It ends debates. It allows people to move forward without revisiting uncomfortable thoughts. Honesty does the opposite. It keeps questions open. It invites complexity. It forces reflection. Reflection takes energy. In a world already saturated with information, energy is limited. Many choose certainty not because it is accurate, but because it is efficient. Efficiency replaces integrity. The need to be right also satisfies another deep psychological desire: control. Uncertainty feels chaotic. It reminds people of how little they truly understand. Being right creates the illusion of mastery. It suggests that the world can be explained, categorized, and predicted. Even when that illusion is false, it is comforting. This is why simple explanations spread faster than complex ones. Complexity introduces ambiguity. Ambiguity threatens certainty. And certainty is emotionally expensive to give up. Noise environments reward decisiveness, not reflection. Statements delivered with confidence are perceived as leadership. Hesitation is perceived as weakness. Over time, people learn to present certainty even when they do not feel it internally. This performance of certainty becomes normalized. Honesty requires saying things like, "I might be wrong," or "I don't have enough information," or "This is more complicated than it seems." These statements do not generate applause. They do not go viral. They do not create strong emotional reactions. So they are quietly discouraged. In contrast, bold declarations attract attention. They signal strength. They imply authority. Even when unsupported by evidence, they feel persuasive because confidence itself becomes evidence. This is how confidence replaces credibility. Another reason being right feels better than being honest is social alignment. Opinions are rarely formed in isolation. They are shaped by communities, cultures, and groups. Agreeing with others provides belonging. Disagreeing risks exclusion. In group settings, honesty can be costly. Questioning a shared belief can lead to isolation. Challenging a dominant opinion can invite criticism. Silence can feel safer than truth. Agreement can feel easier than integrity. The irony is that true confidence does not come from certainty. It comes from resilience. It comes from knowing that being wrong is survivable. That identity does not collapse when beliefs change. That learning is not weakness. But this kind of confidence takes time to develop. It requires environments that reward curiosity rather than certainty. It requires space for silence, reflection, and humility. Noise offers none of these. In the age of noise, honesty must be chosen deliberately. It does not happen by default. It requires slowing down when everything demands speed. It requires listening when everything encourages speaking. It requires questioning when everything insists on answers. Choosing honesty over being right is not about abandoning opinions. It is about holding them lightly. It is about allowing evidence to shape belief rather than forcing belief to shape evidence. This choice is difficult. It is uncomfortable. And it often goes unnoticed. But it is essential. Because when being right becomes more important than being honest, truth becomes optional. And when truth becomes optional, reality itself becomes negotiable. Understanding why being right feels better than being honest reveals a deeper problem. It shows that the battle is not between facts and opinions, but between comfort and courage. Between certainty and humility. Between noise and reflection. And recognizing this battle is the first step toward choosing differently. When feelings replaced evidence. There was a time when evidence was something you brought to a conversation. It was the foundation of disagreement, the starting point of debate, and the boundary that separated opinion from fact. Evidence was not always perfect, but it was respected. It was understood that claims required support and that truth demanded verification. That understanding has quietly eroded. In the age of noise, feelings have stepped into the role that evidence once held. Emotional certainty now carries more weight than proof. How something feels has become more important than whether it is true. And the more strongly something is felt, the more real it seems. This shift did not happen because people suddenly stopped caring about truth. It happened because feelings are immediate, accessible, and deeply persuasive. Evidence takes time. Feelings arrive instantly. In a world that values speed above all else, immediacy wins. Feelings feel personal. They are experienced internally, privately, and intensely. When someone says, "This is how I feel," it sounds unchallengeable. Questioning a feeling feels invasive, even disrespectful. Evidence, by contrast, is external. It can be examined, disputed, and revised. Feelings resist that process. As a result, emotional experience has begun to function as proof. This transformation changes the nature of disagreement. In the past, people argued over facts. Today, they argue over feelings. But feelings cannot be falsified. They cannot be measured. They cannot be disproven. When a conversation is grounded in emotion rather than evidence, resolution becomes impossible. Disagreement turns into collision. The rise of emotional truth is closely tied to the culture of noise. Noise thrives on emotion because emotion captures attention. Anger spreads faster than calm explanation. Fear spreads faster than statistical context. Joy spreads faster than careful analysis. Algorithms amplify what provokes reaction, not what promotes understanding. Over time, this shapes perception. People learn to trust emotional responses more than factual ones. If something feels alarming, it must be dangerous. If something feels validating, it must be true. If something feels offensive, it must be wrong. Feelings become filters through which all information passes. This does not mean feelings are irrelevant. Emotions have always played a role in human decision-making. They provide insight into values, priorities, and experiences. The problem arises when feelings are treated as substitutes for evidence rather than companions to it. When feelings replace evidence, reality becomes unstable. One of the most significant consequences of this shift is the personalization of truth. Statements like, "my truth," and "your truth," suggest that reality is subjective, shaped entirely by perspective. While perspective influences interpretation, it does not create facts. Yet the language of emotional truth blurs this distinction. In this framework, disagreement is no longer about accuracy. It becomes about invalidation. Challenging a claim feels like denying someone's lived experience. Evidence is seen not as clarification, but as attack. This creates an environment where facts feel aggressive. When evidence contradicts emotion, evidence is often rejected. Not because it is wrong, but because it feels threatening. The mind protects emotional investment by dismissing information that disrupts it. This defense mechanism is natural, but noise intensifies it by rewarding emotional alignment. Noise tells people that their feelings are not only valid, but authoritative. This authority reshapes public discourse. Decisions are increasingly justified by emotional appeal rather than empirical support. Arguments are framed in terms of harm and offense rather than accuracy and consequence. While empathy is important, it cannot replace evidence without consequence. Policies built on emotion alone often collapse under reality. Narratives driven by feeling struggle to adapt when circumstances change. But in the moment, they feel compelling, and that feeling is often enough. Another effect of emotional truth is moral certainty. Feelings provide clarity. They tell people what is right and wrong quickly and decisively. Evidence introduces nuance. It complicates moral narratives. It forces people to acknowledge trade-offs and unintended consequences. Nuance feels unsatisfying in a noisy environment. It slows momentum. It weakens emotional impact. As a result, it is often rejected in favor of simpler moral stories grounded in feeling. This simplification creates division. When feelings are elevated to truth, opposing views are not simply wrong, they are immoral. Disagreement becomes evidence of bad character rather than difference in understanding. Conversation gives way to condemnation. Noise feeds this process by amplifying the most emotionally charged interpretations. The more intense the feeling, the wider the reach. Over time, emotional extremes dominate the conversation, pushing moderation and evidence to the margins. The shift from evidence to feeling also affects personal identity. Beliefs become emotional commitments. Changing one's mind feels like betraying oneself. Evidence that contradicts emotional beliefs creates internal conflict, which the mind resolves by rejecting the evidence. This is not ignorance. It is self-protection. In a world saturated with noise, emotional alignment provides stability. It offers a sense of belonging. Shared feelings create communities. Evidence, by contrast, can isolate. It can place individuals at odds with groups they care about. So many choose feeling over fact, not because they hate truth, but because they value connection. This dynamic is especially powerful in digital spaces. Online platforms collapse distance and context. Emotional cues replace nuance. Tone is inferred rather than heard. Misunderstanding spreads easily. Strong emotional expressions stand out, while careful explanations fade. The architecture of these spaces favors feeling. Likes, shares, and reactions reward emotional resonance. Evidence without emotional framing struggles to compete. Over time, users learn what works and adjust accordingly. They speak in feelings because feelings are heard. The danger is not emotion itself, but imbalance. When feelings dominate without evidence, decisions become reactive. When evidence is ignored, mistakes repeat. When truth is defined by emotion, reality becomes fragmented. This fragmentation erodes trust. If everyone has their own truth, shared reality disappears. Without shared reality, cooperation becomes difficult. Dialogue becomes strained. Progress slows. Yet reversing this trend is not about suppressing emotion. It is about restoring balance. Feelings provide motivation. Evidence provides direction. One without the other leads to distortion. Relearning how to hold feelings without surrendering to them requires effort. It requires slowing down reactions. It requires separating emotional response from factual claim. It requires asking not only, "How does this make me feel?" but also, "What supports this?" In the age of noise, these questions feel radical. But they are necessary. When feelings replaced evidence, truth did not vanish, it became harder to reach. It now requires discipline to separate emotional resonance from factual validity. It requires humility to accept when feelings mislead. It requires courage to prioritize accuracy over comfort. Understanding this shift is critical. It reveals why debates feel impossible, why disagreements escalate quickly, and why certainty often arrives without understanding. It explains how sincere people can hold deeply flawed beliefs with absolute confidence. The path forward begins with awareness. Recognizing when feelings are guiding belief allows space for correction. It does not diminish emotion. It strengthens understanding. Because truth does not ask to be felt. It asks to be examined. And in a world where feelings are loud, choosing evidence is an act of quiet resistance. The algorithm doesn't care about truth. The modern world often feels chaotic, but the chaos is not random. It is guided, shaped, and amplified by systems that operate quietly in the background. These systems do not speak, argue, or express opinions. They simply optimize. And what they optimize for is not truth, understanding, or accuracy, but attention. The algorithm does not care whether something is true. It cares whether something is engaging. This single fact explains much of the noise that dominates modern life. Algorithms are designed to maximize time spent, clicks, shares, and reactions. They measure success not by insight gained, but by engagement generated. In doing so, they reshape the information landscape in subtle but powerful ways. Truth is often calm. It is measured. It requires context. Engagement, by contrast, thrives on intensity. It favors surprise, outrage, fear, and certainty. Algorithms learn this quickly. They detect what keeps people watching and feed them more of it. Over time, This creates a feedback loop. Content that provokes emotion is amplified. Content that encourages reflection is buried. The result is an environment where the most visible ideas are not the most accurate, but the most stimulating. This is not the result of malice. It is the result of design. Algorithms are indifferent to meaning. They do not understand nuance. They cannot evaluate evidence. They only recognize patterns of behavior. If content makes people react, it is promoted. If it does not, it fades. In this system, truth competes on uneven ground. Complex ideas struggle to survive in spaces built for speed. Explanations that require patience lose to declarations that promise certainty. Nuanced perspectives are drowned out by extreme ones because extremes generate stronger reactions. The algorithm learns what people respond to and amplifies it relentlessly. This amplification changes behavior. Creators adapt to what works. They learn to frame ideas emotionally, simplify messages, and exaggerate conclusions. Subtlety disappears because it is not rewarded. Accuracy becomes secondary to impact. Over time, this reshapes discourse. Conversations become louder, shorter, and more polarized. The algorithm does not create division, but it magnifies it. It places opposing views side by side, not to encourage dialogue, but to provoke reaction. Conflict keeps attention high. Another consequence of algorithmic curation is personalization. Each person receives a tailored stream of content based on past behavior. This creates the illusion of a shared conversation while quietly isolating individuals in separate informational worlds. What one person sees feels like reality. What another sees feels completely different. Both streams feel complete, convincing, and urgent. Yet they rarely overlap. This fragmentation makes consensus difficult. People argue from entirely different sets of information, each reinforced by algorithmic repetition. Disagreement feels irrational because the underlying realities are misaligned. The algorithm does not correct this. It deepens it. As people engage with content that confirms their beliefs, the system learns to deliver more of the same. This creates echo chambers that feel organic but are artificially reinforced. Within these spaces, opinions are repeated until they feel factual. Contradictory information rarely appears, and when it does, it is often framed as hostile. Truth requires exposure to challenge. Algorithms minimize challenge because challenge reduces engagement. This does not mean algorithms are evil. They are tools designed to serve business goals. But their influence on information flow is profound. By prioritizing engagement, they redefine what becomes visible, credible, and influential. The most important ideas are not those that are true, but those that travel well. Travel requires emotional fuel. Fear is especially effective. It sharpens attention. It creates urgency. Content framed as threat spreads quickly. Even when inaccurate, fear-based narratives outperform calm explanations. The algorithm detects this and responds accordingly. Outrage works similarly. It energizes. It invites participation. It turns viewers into amplifiers. Every reaction signals success. Every share extends reach. Truth, by contrast, rarely inspires immediate reaction. It often requires time to process. It may challenge existing beliefs. These qualities reduce engagement, making truth less visible. The algorithm does not punish truth intentionally. It simply does not protect it. This creates a structural disadvantage for factual information. To compete, truth must be packaged emotionally. It must be simplified. It must be framed in ways that trigger reaction. In the process, accuracy can be compromised. This compromise is subtle. It often begins with omission. Context is removed. Caveats are dropped. Uncertainty is smoothed over. What remains is a sharper, more engaging version of reality that travels farther than the original. Over time, this version replaces the original in public consciousness. Another effect of algorithmic influence is acceleration. Trends rise and fall rapidly. Topics cycle quickly. There is little time for reflection before attention moves elsewhere. This pace discourages deep understanding. By the time facts emerge, attention has shifted. Correction lags behind misinformation. Retractions travel slowly. Clarifications struggle to catch up. The algorithm does not prioritize accuracy updates. It prioritizes novelty. This means first impressions matter disproportionately. Early narratives, even if flawed, shape long-term belief. Once established, they are difficult to dislodge. The algorithm rewards speed, not accuracy. This environment also affects trust. When people encounter conflicting information, they often assume manipulation rather than complexity. Skepticism increases, but it is unfocused. Instead of questioning sources carefully, people reject information broadly. This distrust creates opportunity for those willing to speak with certainty. Confident voices cut through confusion. Even when wrong, they feel reliable. The algorithm amplifies confidence. This is why misinformation often comes wrapped in authority. Tone replaces evidence. Presentation replaces proof. In noisy spaces, how something is said matters more than what is said. Understanding this dynamic is crucial. It explains why rational arguments struggle to gain traction. It explains why debates feel unproductive. It explains why people talk past each other. The issue is not just disagreement. It is structural distortion. Navigating this environment requires awareness. It requires recognizing that visibility does not equal validity. That popularity does not equal truth. That repetition does not equal proof. It also requires intentional resistance. Slowing consumption. Seeking diverse sources. Valuing depth over immediacy. These actions feel small, but they matter. The algorithm will continue to optimize for attention. That will not change. What can change is how people respond. Choosing not to react immediately. Choosing not to share impulsively. Choosing to pause before accepting what feels compelling. In the age of algorithmic noise, these choices are acts of independence. The algorithm does not care about truth. But people still can. And caring is the first step toward reclaiming reality. Echo chambers, where opinions become facts. Echo chambers do not announce themselves. They do not appear as closed rooms with visible walls or locked doors. They feel open, welcoming, and familiar. Inside them, voices agree, reinforce, and repeat. Nothing sounds strange. Nothing feels threatening. Everything makes sense. That comfort is what makes echo chambers so powerful. An echo chamber is not simply a group of people who share opinions. It is an environment where opposing views are filtered out, dismissed, or distorted before they can be examined. Within this environment, beliefs are rarely challenged. They are confirmed, amplified, and normalized until they feel indisputable. In the age of noise, echo chambers are not accidents. They are outcomes. Algorithms encourage them. Social dynamics reinforce them. Human psychology completes them. Together, they create spaces where opinions slowly transform into facts, not because they are true, but because they are uncontested. People do not usually enter echo chambers intentionally. They drift into them. A person engages with content that aligns with their beliefs. The system responds by offering more of the same. Over time, the range of visible perspectives narrows. Dissent becomes rare. Agreement becomes constant. Eventually, alternative views feel distant, irrational, or even hostile. Within an echo chamber, repetition replaces verification. When an idea is heard often enough, it begins to feel self-evident. The mind stops asking for evidence. Familiarity creates trust. Agreement creates confidence. This is how opinions harden. Echo chambers offer emotional safety. They protect identity. They reduce uncertainty. They provide a sense of belonging. These benefits are subtle but powerful. Humans are social creatures. Alignment feels good. Agreement feels reassuring. Challenging beliefs, by contrast, feels disruptive. It introduces discomfort. It threatens group cohesion. In echo chambers, discomfort is treated as danger rather than opportunity. As a result, disagreement is discouraged, not always explicitly, but through tone, ridicule, and social pressure. People learn which questions are acceptable and which are not. Over time, curiosity fades. Noise strengthens echo chambers by amplifying the most aligned voices. Content that reinforces group beliefs spreads quickly. Content that complicates them struggles to gain attention. The algorithm reads engagement as approval and responds accordingly. The chamber becomes louder, tighter, and more confident. Inside these spaces, language evolves. Terms are redefined. Narratives are simplified. Complex issues are framed as moral battles between clear sides. This framing makes disagreement feel not just incorrect, but immoral. Once moral certainty enters the picture, dialogue ends. Facts that contradict group beliefs are treated with suspicion. Sources are questioned. Motives are assigned. Evidence is dismissed not on its merits, but on its origin. Truth becomes conditional, accepted only when it aligns with existing belief. This creates a closed loop. The chamber feeds itself. Echo chambers also distort perception of consensus. When everyone around someone appears to agree, it feels like the majority shares that belief. This perception increases confidence and reduces willingness to reconsider. In reality, the broader world may be far more diverse. But the chamber hides that diversity. This distortion fuels polarization. Groups become more extreme over time because moderate voices are less engaging. Extremes generate stronger reactions. The algorithm amplifies them. The group adapts. Positions shift gradually, often unnoticed by those inside. What once seemed radical becomes normal. What once seemed unthinkable becomes acceptable. This shift feels organic because it happens collectively. Outside the chamber, the change looks sudden. Inside, it feels natural. Another consequence of echo chambers is the erosion of shared language. When groups consume different information and interpret it through different frameworks, communication breaks down. Words carry different meanings. Facts are evaluated differently. Disagreement becomes confusion. This breakdown makes constructive conversation difficult. People talk past each other, each convinced the other is ignoring obvious truth. Frustration grows. Hostility follows. Noise amplifies this hostility by rewarding confrontation. Clips of conflict travel faster than calm dialogue. Extreme reactions draw attention. Moderation disappears from view. Echo chambers thrive in this environment. It is important to understand that echo chambers are not limited to any single belief system. They form around politics, culture, health, identity, and more. They are not signs of ignorance. They are signs of human psychology interacting with modern systems. Smart, well-intentioned people fall into echo chambers all the time. The danger lies not in having beliefs, but in insulating them from challenge. Without exposure to disagreement, beliefs stagnate. Errors persist. Misunderstandings deepen. Progress requires friction. Breaking out of an echo chamber is uncomfortable. It requires encountering ideas that challenge identity. It requires accepting uncertainty. It requires humility. These qualities are not rewarded in noisy spaces. Yet they are essential. Awareness is the first step. Recognizing that comfort does not equal correctness creates space for reflection. Seeking out credible disagreement expands perspective. Listening without immediate judgment reopens dialogue. These actions feel counterintuitive in an environment built on certainty. But they matter. Echo chambers turn opinions into facts by removing resistance. They create confidence without verification. They offer belonging without understanding. In doing so, they reshape reality. Escaping them does not require abandoning beliefs. It requires holding them lightly. It requires allowing evidence to matter again. In a world of noise, echo chambers are tempting refuges. They offer clarity in chaos. But clarity without truth is illusion. An illusion, no matter how comforting, eventually collapses. Understanding echo chambers is not about blame. It is about awareness. It is about recognizing how modern systems shape perception and learning to navigate them with intention. Because truth does not grow in isolation. It grows through challenge, dialogue, and openness. And without those, even the loudest certainty remains fragile. Confidently wrong, the most dangerous type of person. Confidence is a powerful force. It inspires trust, commands attention, and influences decisions. People naturally gravitate toward those who speak with certainty. When someone delivers an idea with conviction, listeners often assume competence, even in the absence of evidence. Confidence is a social shortcut. It allows the brain to decide quickly, to trust instinct over analysis, to rely on appearance rather than verification. Yet confidence is neutral. It can be wielded for good or for harm. What makes the confidently wrong particularly dangerous is that it combines the psychological power of certainty with the absence of truth. When wrongness wears confidence as a mask, it becomes persuasive, viral, and destructive. Throughout history, confidently wrong individuals have shaped societies, influenced decisions, and altered perceptions. The impact is often subtle at first: misleading statements repeated in meetings, false claims reinforced in conversations, errors normalized in groups. Slowly, repetition breeds acceptance. What begins as uncertainty morphs into conviction. The confident voice silences doubt, even when the evidence is clear. Humans are wired to trust confidence. It signals knowledge, competence, and reliability. This trust was adaptive in evolutionary terms. When danger appeared, those who acted decisively were often the ones who survived. But in modern contexts, this instinct can backfire. The confidently wrong exploits this trust, intentionally or not, to shape perception, influence decisions, and resist correction. The danger is amplified by social systems that reward confidence. In workplaces, schools, politics, and online platforms, decisive voices are promoted. Those who hesitate, qualify statements, or express uncertainty often receive less attention, less influence, and less authority. Noise favors confidence, not correctness. The confidently wrong thrives in this environment because the systems themselves amplify what humans naturally trust. One of the most insidious aspects of the confidently wrong is its resistance to correction. When challenged, confidence can become defensive, argumentative, or performative. People rarely see the doubt behind the statement, only the certainty. The brain interprets this as competence, even in the presence of contradiction. Evidence becomes secondary, perception dominates reality. This phenomenon has psychological roots. Cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort of holding conflicting beliefs, leads people to rationalize mistakes. The confidently wrong often rationalizes errors to maintain authority. Their audience, observing confidence without evidence, tends to follow suit. Over time, group reinforcement magnifies error into apparent fact. In noisy environments, the confidently wrong finds fertile ground. Social media amplifies their voice. Algorithms reward engagement, not accuracy. Outrage spreads faster than nuance. People are more likely to share bold claims than cautious clarifications. Each share strengthens perceived credibility. The louder they speak, the more they appear to be correct, regardless of truth. The risks extend beyond perception. Confidently wrong individuals influence policy, behavior, and belief systems. Misinformed decisions cascade into societal consequences. Health, politics, finance, and education can be shaped by the assertion of authority rather than evidence. When wrongness wears confidence as armor, it becomes resistant to correction, durable under scrutiny, and persuasive even to experts. Education and culture often exacerbate the problem. From an early age, people are taught to value correctness, authority, and certainty. Schools reward those who answer quickly, confidently, and convincingly. Mistakes are penalized. This reinforces the belief that confidence equates to competence. By adulthood, individuals unconsciously associate boldness with reliability, creating fertile ground for the confidently wrong to take root. Yet the danger is not confined to others. Anyone can become confidently wrong. The environment encourages certainty over humility, immediate reaction over reflection, and performance over understanding. Even well-intentioned people, when caught in the flow of noise, may assert ideas they do not fully comprehend. Confidence can easily outpace knowledge. The antidote is awareness and deliberate skepticism. Recognizing the power of confidence allows one to pause, question, and seek evidence. This is not cynicism, it is discernment. It is the ability to separate style from substance, assertion from authority, performance from truth. One strategy is to prioritize evidence over tone. Focus on sources, data, and logic rather than delivery, charisma, or decisiveness. Notice when certainty feels compelling and ask why. Confidence can be persuasive, but it is not proof. Evidence remains the foundation of understanding. Another strategy is humility. Accepting the limits of one's knowledge reduces the risk of confidently wrong statements. Admitting uncertainty is not weakness, it is a pathway to truth. In a noisy environment, humility feels counterintuitive because it is quieter and slower. Yet it is precisely what creates resilience, credibility, and lasting insight. The confidently wrong also thrives because people resist challenging them. Disagreement is uncomfortable. Social norms favor deference to authority. Fear of conflict, social rejection, or embarrassment often silences critics. In turn, errors persist, amplified by repetition, until they are normalized. Noise intensifies this dynamic. Rapid-fire information flows discourage verification. People react emotionally rather than analytically. The confidently wrong gains traction by filling the gaps where reflection is scarce. Volume replaces scrutiny. Certainty outcompetes caution. It is important to distinguish between confidence and arrogance. Confidence is not inherently negative. Arrogance is often performative, masking uncertainty with bravado. Both, however, can mislead when not grounded in truth. Recognizing the difference requires attention, reflection, and discernment. The consequences of failing to address confidently wrong behavior are cumulative. One statement may seem inconsequential, but repeated errors create distorted perceptions. Communities adopt flawed narratives. Policies are based on misperception. Beliefs solidify around authority rather than reality. In public discourse, this effect is magnified. Influencers, thought leaders, and public figures hold large audiences. When they assert ideas confidently, their followers often accept them without question. Algorithms amplify the message, feedback loops reinforce belief, and the confidently wrong shapes collective understanding with disproportionate influence. Yet the solution lies not in silencing voices, but in cultivating critical engagement. Encouraging questioning, teaching discernment, and valuing evidence over style equips individuals to recognize when confidence is unearned. Developing habits of verification and reflection reduces the sway of the confidently wrong. Cultural shifts can also help. Rewarding humility, curiosity, and careful reasoning promotes environments where truth has more influence than mere boldness. Celebrating reflection over performance, patience over immediacy, and substance over style changes the social calculus. Ultimately, the confidently wrong thrives in environments where noise dominates, speed outpaces reflection, and perception outweighs verification. Recognizing this pattern is essential for navigating modern discourse. By understanding the dynamics, individuals can resist persuasion without evidence, question authority without cynicism, and prioritize truth over performance. Being confidently wrong is not rare. It is a product of human psychology interacting with modern systems. Awareness, skepticism, humility, and discipline are the tools required to counter it. Without them, the confidently wrong continues to shape opinions, decisions, and reality itself. In the end, the lesson is simple: confidence is not a substitute for truth. Being loud and certain does not make a statement correct. True power lies not in assertion, but in understanding. Those who grasp this are equipped to navigate the age of noise, separating what is persuasive from what is real, and resisting the influence of those confidently wrong. The virality of mistakes. Mistakes have always existed. They are part of human nature, inevitable and often instructive. Historically, errors were visible, accountable, and contextual. They were discussed, analyzed, and corrected over time. The consequences were often limited to those directly involved. Learning followed. Knowledge accumulated. Society moved forward. The age of noise has changed all of that. Mistakes now travel faster, farther, and louder than ever before. They are not confined to private spaces or small communities. They are broadcast instantly to millions of people. They are amplified, dissected, and judged in real time. And once a mistake goes viral, it rarely returns to its original context. Meaning is stripped. Nuance is lost. Errors become narratives. In this environment, the impact of mistakes is magnified, not just for those who make them, but for everyone observing. A single misstatement, misinterpretation, or misunderstanding can spread globally within minutes. The velocity of noise ensures that mistakes dominate attention. Corrections arrive slowly, if at all. Context disappears under the weight of immediacy. The virality of mistakes is not purely technological. It is psychological. Humans are drawn to error. Mistakes are attention-grabbing. They provoke emotion, spark debate, and invite judgment. People feel compelled to react. Social media structures this reaction, rewarding the loudest, fastest responses. Algorithms amplify mistakes because engagement increases. Emotional fuel feeds the spread. In other words, mistakes become content. Once a mistake is public, it takes on a life of its own. Even if corrected, it continues to exist in the memories, discussions, and social streams of those who witnessed it. First impressions dominate. Early narratives shape perception. Later corrections struggle to compete. The viral mistake becomes a reference point, a symbol, or a cautionary tale, regardless of the original truth. This dynamic has profound implications for discourse. People grow hesitant. Fear of error influences speech. Individuals prefer statements with caveats, soften claims, or avoid sharing ideas altogether. Noise discourages exploration. It penalizes experimentation. Mistakes, once private and correctable, are now public and permanent. Ironically, the very tools designed to increase communication and understanding amplify the opposite: error, misperception, and overreaction. Communication velocity has outpaced the human capacity for verification. Mistakes travel faster than comprehension. Emotions outrun analysis. Attention outpaces context. Another consequence is social pressure. In viral environments, people witness others reacting, mocking, condemning, or sensationalizing errors. Observers internalize the lesson: speaking without absolute certainty is risky. Expressing nuanced opinions feels unsafe. Social conformity intensifies. Voices shrink. Public discourse narrows. Misperception thrives in this climate. People assume intentions, infer motives, and assign blame based on incomplete information. Viral mistakes often exaggerate these assumptions. The individual becomes more important than the error. Identity overshadows understanding. Once again, feelings overpower facts. The psychological toll is immense. Witnessing mistakes spread uncontrollably produces anxiety, skepticism, and fatigue. People grow cautious of both information and interaction. Trust erodes. The line between truth and rumor blurs. Fatigue creates apathy. Silence replaces engagement. Noise consumes attention without producing comprehension. Mistakes also affect perception of expertise. When errors go viral, they often overshadow consistent accuracy. A single misstep becomes more memorable than a decade of competence. Audiences remember the drama, not the context. Experts are judged by the most public moments, not by evidence of mastery. Confidence and presentation outweigh precision. The viral mistake distorts reputation, often permanently. Furthermore, the virality of mistakes fuels moral judgment. Public exposure magnifies accountability. Audiences are quick to condemn, often based on emotion rather than evidence. The punishment becomes part of the spectacle. Noise rewards outrage. Noise punishes reflection. In viral spaces, morality is judged instantly, context is ignored, and error is amplified for entertainment. This environment encourages defensive behavior. People avoid sharing ideas that could be wrong. Nuanced positions are abandoned. Debate shrinks. Intellectual risk diminishes. Individuals increasingly rely on repetition and affirmation rather than critical thinking. Echo chambers grow. Confidence without truth becomes the path of least resistance. The viral nature of mistakes also shifts cultural norms. Errors, once temporary and correctable, are now permanent references. They shape perception of individuals, institutions, and ideas. Viral mistakes become cautionary tales, myths, or symbols. Society internalizes them as lessons on credibility, authority, and behavior, often distorting reality in the process. Yet not all viral mistakes are inherently bad. They can prompt learning, reflection, and correction. The problem lies in the scale, speed, and emotional amplification. Noise transforms ordinary mistakes into public phenomena with outsized impact. The context required for understanding is rarely present, making the mistake both permanent and misleading. For creators, public figures, and ordinary participants, this environment demands caution. It requires verification before broadcasting. It requires awareness of psychological triggers that amplify error. It demands patience, humility, and strategic communication. In the age of noise, mistakes are no longer private, they are public events with social, cultural, and emotional consequences. The lesson is clear: speed is not always valuable. Visibility is not always validation. Reaction is not always understanding. Viral mistakes teach a harsh truth: in a world dominated by noise, error spreads faster than comprehension, emotion outruns evidence, and context becomes optional. Resisting this pattern requires deliberate action. Slow down. Verify. Pause before sharing. Cultivate patience. Seek depth over immediacy. Encourage reflection over reaction. Celebrate learning over perfection. These choices counteract the velocity of viral error and reclaim control over perception. Mistakes will happen, they always have. But the viral amplification of mistakes is a new challenge, unique to this era of noise. Understanding its dynamics is essential. Awareness allows individuals to navigate public spaces without being overwhelmed, misled, or silenced. It allows mistakes to be addressed without distortion, learning to be preserved, and discourse to survive. The virality of mistakes is a mirror, reflecting the interplay between human psychology, social systems, and technology. It highlights how noise shapes perception, amplifies error, and influences behavior. It underscores the need for intentional reflection, critical thinking, and disciplined communication. Without these, society risks confusing drama for truth, outrage for insight, and repetition for evidence. In the end, viral mistakes are inevitable, but their impact is not. By understanding the mechanisms that amplify error, individuals can protect themselves, preserve truth, and engage meaningfully. They can resist the pressure to react impulsively, the lure of the loudest voices, and the simplification of complexity. They can reclaim clarity in a world dominated by noise. Mistakes are natural. Noise makes them extraordinary. Awareness, patience, and discipline allow people to navigate this new reality, transforming viral error from chaos into learning, and from spectacle into opportunity. The dangerous lure of popularity. Popularity has always been a human concern. Long before social media, societies recognized status, influence, and approval. Being liked, admired, or followed carried tangible benefits, safety, opportunity, and social cohesion. In a world of limited communication, popularity was earned slowly, often through consistent behavior, demonstrated skill, or valued contribution. The modern world has changed the rules. Popularity is now instantaneous, quantifiable, and broadcast globally. A post, a statement, or even a fleeting idea can attract thousands, millions, or tens of millions of people within hours. Popularity is no longer tied to merit, it is tied to visibility, amplification, and emotional resonance. This shift has profound consequences for how people think, act, and interact. The lure of popularity is powerful because it taps directly into human psychology. Social approval activates reward systems in the brain. Likes, shares, and followers trigger dopamine, creating a sense of satisfaction and validation. When attention is measurable, it becomes addictive. Popularity is no longer abstract, it becomes quantifiable reinforcement. This quantification changes behavior. People begin to optimize their actions, words, and appearances not for truth or understanding, but for appeal. They learn what triggers engagement. They experiment with tone, emotion, and framing. Complexity is often sacrificed for clarity, subtlety replaced by spectacle. Content is designed to attract attention, not necessarily to inform or educate. In a noisy world, popularity often becomes a proxy for correctness. When thousands or millions support an idea, the mind interprets it as credible. Repetition reinforces belief. Familiarity breeds trust. And because humans are social creatures, aligning with popular opinions feels safer than questioning them. This effect is subtle but powerful. Popularity becomes both the goal and the measure of truth. Creators, public figures, and influencers operate within this feedback loop. Their audience rewards engagement, not accuracy. Emotional resonance is more effective than evidence. Outrage travels faster than calm reasoning. Viral ideas, whether accurate or misleading, are elevated by sheer attention. Noise amplifies the reach and impact of popularity. The danger lies in its detachment from truth. Popularity can flourish in the absence of accuracy. Loudness, confidence, and emotional appeal often outperform careful analysis. The more an idea resonates with emotion, the more likely it is to be shared, regardless of its factual basis. Visibility replaces verification. Consensus replaces evidence. Social media intensifies this effect by algorithmically promoting content that maximizes engagement. The louder, bolder, and more emotionally charged, the higher it climbs. Popularity is rewarded with amplification, which in turn reinforces its perceived legitimacy. The cycle repeats, magnifying influence and obscuring truth. The law of popularity also encourages performance over substance. People adopt personas, exaggerate ideas, and present simplified narratives to attract attention. Authenticity is often compromised in favor of appeal. Nuance, complexity, and caution are penalized because they generate less immediate reaction. Noise and speed reward the performative, not the accurate. This phenomenon explains why misinformation spreads. When popularity is prioritized over truth, ideas with emotional resonance, even if false, travel faster and farther than careful, fact-based reasoning. People share what feels compelling, what attracts approval, and what aligns with identity. Accuracy is secondary. Attention is primary. The effect is cumulative. Once an idea gains popularity, its perceived legitimacy grows. Others, observing the enthusiasm, are more likely to adopt it. Echo chambers reinforce it. Confidence, repetition, and emotion consolidate belief. Popularity becomes both cause and effect of perceived truth. Humans are particularly susceptible because popularity appeals to social instincts. Being aligned with the majority feels safe. Being different feels risky. In environments where attention is scarce and exposure is instantaneous, deviation invites criticism, ridicule, and social penalty. Following popular ideas minimizes risk. Questioning them introduces conflict. Noise magnifies these pressures. Rapid-fire communication, constant visibility, and algorithmic amplification ensure that public perception is immediate and persistent. Popularity is no longer abstract, it is inescapable. Even silence can be interpreted as dissent or weakness. The system encourages alignment with popular trends, even in the absence of understanding. The law of popularity also distorts personal judgment. People begin to evaluate ideas based on reception rather than merit. A well-liked statement feels more credible than a less visible truth. Consensus is equated with correctness. This dynamic undermines critical thinking, creating an environment where perception outweighs reality. Another consequence is self-censorship. Fear of being unpopular discourages exploration, debate, and honesty. Individuals hesitate to voice doubt or nuance. They adopt positions that are safe, popular, or easily digestible. Original thought is suppressed in favor of conformity. Noise amplifies this effect by rewarding rapid alignment with trends. This dynamic is evident across politics, culture, and media. Viral narratives dominate discourse regardless of accuracy. Popular opinions drown out minority perspectives. Social reward encourages repetition and conformity. Noise ensures visibility, not validation. The loudest, most emotionally resonant voices rise to the top. Yet popularity is seductive precisely because it feels good. It provides validation, influence, and belonging. It creates a sense of significance. In a world saturated with noise, these rewards are immediate, measurable, and addictive. People naturally gravitate toward what feels rewarding, even when it undermines truth. The challenge, therefore, is not to reject popularity altogether. Popularity itself is neutral. It is a social signal, a measure of attention, not a measure of accuracy. The challenge is learning to navigate its influence without allowing it to dictate judgment, belief, or decision-making. This requires awareness. Recognizing the psychological pull of popularity allows space for reflection. Understanding the mechanisms of amplification helps individuals separate emotional appeal from factual integrity. Awareness enables discernment, allowing people to appreciate influence without being misled by it. It also requires deliberate practice. slowing down reactions, seeking verification, questioning consensus, and valuing evidence over approval are essential habits. Cultivating spaces for reflection and critical engagement counteracts the distortions created by noise and popularity. The lure of popularity is strongest in environments dominated by noise, speed, and emotional amplification. It is less compelling in spaces that value deliberation, analysis, and context. By consciously seeking depth over spectacle, individuals can resist the gravitational pull of attention and maintain fidelity to truth. Popularity can inspire, inform, and connect. But when it is confused with correctness, it becomes dangerous. Loudness does not equal accuracy. Approval does not equal evidence. Mass attention does not guarantee truth. Recognizing this distinction is essential for navigating modern discourse. In a world dominated by noise, the most powerful ideas are not always the most popular. The quiet, measured, and thoughtful often struggle for visibility. Yet these ideas are precisely what sustain understanding, integrity, and progress. Popularity may attract attention, but discernment preserves truth. The lesson is clear: popularity is seductive, immediate, and emotionally compelling. Noise amplifies it, rewards it, and conflates it with truth. Awareness, critical thinking, and disciplined reflection are necessary to navigate its influence. Only by separating approval from accuracy can individuals maintain perspective, resist manipulation, and prioritize understanding in an environment dominated by attention. Popularity is a force. Like all forces, it can be harnessed or it can mislead. Recognizing its power, understanding its mechanics, and maintaining vigilance against its distortions is essential for anyone seeking clarity, insight, or truth in the age of noise. The polarization trap. Polarization is not new. Throughout history, human societies have divided along lines of ideology, religion, culture, and identity. Disagreement, conflict, and division are natural consequences of diversity. Yet, in the age of noise, polarization has become faster, deeper, and more difficult to escape. What was once a gradual process of difference has transformed into an accelerated, amplified, and highly visible divide. Noise is the engine of polarization. Rapid communication, algorithmic amplification, and constant exposure to selective information make disagreements more extreme and more emotionally charged. Differences are highlighted. Common ground is obscured. Nuance is punished. In this environment, moderate voices are drowned out by extremes, and complex issues are simplified into black and white narratives. Psychology reinforces the trap. Humans are wired to identify with groups. Group identity provides safety, belonging, and meaning. When beliefs become intertwined with identity, disagreements are no longer about ideas, they are about the self. To challenge an idea becomes to challenge the person. The stakes feel personal, emotional, and urgent. Echo chambers accelerate this process. When people inhabit environments where their opinions are constantly reinforced and opposing views are filtered out or attacked, beliefs harden. Confidence grows. Extremes feel normal. Dissent feels dangerous. Noise amplifies this effect by rewarding engagement, outrage, and reaction, rather than dialogue, understanding, or compromise. Social media intensifies polarization further. Algorithms optimize for attention, promoting content that triggers strong reactions. Controversy spreads faster than context. Outrage travels farther than calm discussion. Posts that provoke emotional responses are amplified, while moderate perspectives struggle to gain visibility. This creates a feedback loop: extremes gain attention, tension reinforces extremity, and the divide widens. Polarization changes perception. People begin to see opponents not as humans with legitimate perspectives, but as threats, enemies, or obstacles. Disagreement is moralized. Complexity is dismissed. Labels replace understanding. Us versus them becomes the default mental framework, and dialogue becomes increasingly adversarial. The consequences are profound. Polarization reduces cooperation, undermines trust, and erodes social cohesion. It creates a culture where debate becomes performance, persuasion becomes aggression, and compromise is equated with weakness. In this environment, solutions to shared problems become harder to achieve because conversation itself is poisoned by division. Emotion drives this polarization. Fear, anger, and indignation are powerful motivators. They trigger engagement. They energize groups. They create urgency. Noise magnifies emotional responses, making it easier to identify and exploit vulnerabilities. People respond more to feeling than to evidence, allowing extremes to dominate discourse. Cognitive biases exacerbate the trap. Confirmation bias leads individuals to seek information that aligns with pre-existing beliefs. Availability bias causes emotionally charged examples to overshadow statistical reality. Groupthink pressures individuals to conform to the dominant narrative of their community. Each of these biases strengthens the effects of noise, accelerating polarization. Misinformation thrives in polarized environments. When people prioritize alignment with their group over independent verification, errors are repeated, amplified, and solidified. Falsehoods spread because they feel right emotionally and socially, even if they are factually wrong. The viral nature of content ensures that once an idea gains traction within a group, it becomes resistant to correction. Polarization also reshapes identity. People define themselves in opposition to the other side. What one believes becomes secondary to who one opposes. This identity-driven alignment makes compromise psychologically difficult. Changing opinions is no longer a matter of evidence, it is a threat to self-concept and social belonging. Noise intensifies these pressures. Constant exposure to opposing voices, often presented as hostile or extreme, strengthens defensive postures. Individuals interpret neutrality or moderation as weakness. Over time, positions radicalize, dialogue diminishes, and division solidifies. Extremity feels safer and more validated than nuance. The effects are not limited to online spaces. Polarization bleeds into workplaces, communities, families, and governments. Decision-making becomes partisan rather than rational. Collaboration is replaced by contest. Public discourse prioritizes performance over progress. Solutions to shared challenges are stalled by entrenched disagreement. Breaking free of the polarization trap is challenging but not impossible. It requires awareness of psychological and systemic forces. Recognizing biases, questioning assumptions, and deliberately seeking out diverse perspectives helps counteract the pull of groupthink. Exposure to opposing views, when approached thoughtfully, can reduce extremity and foster empathy. Dialogue is essential. Polarization thrives when conversation is reduced to performance or outrage. Reintroducing curiosity, patience, and listening into discussions helps create shared understanding. Silence the reflex to react emotionally. Resist the urge to respond immediately. Reflect before engaging. Critical thinking is another key defense. Evaluate claims based on evidence, not alignment. Assess sources, consider context, and question motivation. Discernment reduces the influence of noise and prevents group dynamics from dictating belief. Confidence grounded in understanding is more resilient than popularity, outrage, or emotional resonance. Building bridges across divides requires intentionality. Seek common ground. Identify shared goals. Focus on problems, not opponents. Emphasize understanding over persuasion. These strategies counteract the structural forces that amplify noise and strengthen polarization. Yet even with effort, the age of noise ensures that polarization will continue to exist. Its acceleration is baked into the systems humans use. Algorithms, social dynamics, and cognitive biases make it persistent. Awareness, reflection, and deliberate action are not a cure, they are survival tools. They allow individuals and communities to navigate divides without being swept away. The polarization trap is dangerous because it is self-reinforcing. Noise accelerates extremity. Emotion amplifies division. Social identity hardens beliefs. Algorithms reward reaction over reason. Once entrenched, separation feels natural, inevitable, and permanent. Escaping requires courage, patience, and humility. The key insight is that polarization is not only a social phenomenon, it is a psychological and systemic one. Understanding how noise interacts with identity, emotion, and cognition is essential for reducing its impact. Recognizing the forces that push groups apart allows individuals to resist them and seek connection, compromise, and clarity. In a noisy world, the greatest challenge may not be winning arguments, it may be maintaining perspective. Preserving the ability to listen, reflect, and question is the antidote to division. Awareness of the polarization trap allows people to navigate extremes, resist manipulation, and preserve their capacity for reasoned judgment. Ultimately, the polarization trap is both inevitable and avoidable. Its existence is amplified by noise, but its influence can be mitigated through critical thought, intentional dialogue, and emotional self-awareness. Understanding the trap does not eliminate disagreement, it allows people to engage with it constructively rather than be consumed by it. The lesson is clear: noise accelerates division, emotion fuels extremity, and identity strengthens the pull of the group. Awareness, discernment, and intentional reflection provide a pathway to resist these pressures. In the age of noise, avoiding the polarization trap requires patience, courage, and the deliberate cultivation of understanding over reaction. Reclaiming clarity, navigating the age of noise. The age of noise has taught us many lessons. We have seen how opinions can drown out facts, how feelings often replace evidence, and how algorithms amplify emotion over understanding. We have explored the dangers of echo chambers, the persuasiveness of the confidently wrong, the velocity of viral mistakes, the seduction of popularity, and the deepening of polarization. Part by part, these forces reveal a reality that is louder, faster, and more fragmented than ever before. Yet amidst this chaos, there is hope. Noise is pervasive, but clarity is not impossible. Reclaiming understanding, truth, and perspective requires conscious effort. It is not a matter of eliminating noise, this is impossible, but of navigating it with awareness, discipline, and intention. The goal is not silence, the goal is discernment. The first step in reclaiming clarity is awareness. Understanding the mechanisms that amplify noise is essential. Recognize that repetition, emotion, and social reinforcement can distort perception. Accept that algorithms reward attention, not accuracy, and that virality often prioritizes spectacle over substance. Awareness allows individuals to pause, question, and reflect before accepting information as truth. Awareness must be paired with critical thinking. Evaluate claims based on evidence, context, and logic rather than popularity or presentation. Question the sources of information, the motivations behind messaging, and the emotional triggers it may be activating. Critical thinking provides a framework for separating persuasive style from factual content, allowing individuals to navigate noisy environments without being swept away. Another crucial skill is emotional intelligence. In the age of noise, feelings often dominate facts. Emotional reactions can cloud judgment, making statements feel true even when they are not. By observing emotions without surrendering to them, individuals gain clarity. They can recognize when fear, anger, or excitement is influencing perception and make deliberate choices rather than reactive ones. Humility is equally important. Accepting the limits of one's knowledge creates space for growth. It allows individuals to acknowledge uncertainty, consider alternative perspectives, and revise beliefs when evidence warrants. Humility counteracts the pull of confidently wrong voices, echo chambers, and the lure of popularity by emphasizing truth over ego. Patience is a rare but powerful tool in navigating noise. The modern environment values immediacy, but clarity often requires time. Understanding complex issues, verifying claims, and contextualizing information are processes that cannot be rushed. Slowing down allows individuals to prioritize depth over speed, substance over sensation, and understanding over performance. Building resilient communities is another essential strategy. Engaging with diverse perspectives, encouraging dialogue, and fostering environments where disagreement is safe promotes collective clarity. Noise thrives in isolation and polarization. Communities grounded in mutual respect, critical inquiry, and shared goals create buffers against distortion. Information hygiene is also vital. Curate sources carefully. Seek balance rather than confirmation. Question viral claims and resist the reflex to share immediately. By actively managing exposure to noise, individuals reduce susceptibility to manipulation, error, and polarization. Attention is finite. How it is allocated determines perception and influence. The act of reclaiming clarity is both personal and social. Individually, it empowers thoughtfulness, discernment, and resilience. Socially, it promotes dialogue, accountability, and shared understanding. Clarity is not the absence of noise, it is the ability to perceive truth amidst it, to act deliberately despite distraction, and to maintain reason in emotionally charged environments. Education and culture play crucial roles in supporting this reclamation. Teaching critical thinking, media literacy, emotional regulation, and reflective habits equips individuals to navigate the challenges of modern discourse. Cultivating curiosity, skepticism, and patience prepares society to resist manipulation, challenge extremity, and value truth over attention. Reclaiming clarity also requires courage. It is uncomfortable to question widely accepted opinions, to resist viral narratives, and to challenge popular sentiment. It is inconvenient to pause before reacting, to research instead of sharing instantly, and to prioritize evidence over emotion. Yet these small acts of resistance accumulate, creating space for understanding in the midst of noise. One of the most powerful tools in this process is self-reflection. Regularly examining one's beliefs, motivations, and reactions allows for alignment between perception and reality. Reflection exposes cognitive biases, emotional triggers, and social influences. It transforms passive consumption of information into active engagement, turning noise into insight. Empathy is also essential. Understanding that others are navigating the same noisy environment fosters patience and dialogue. It reduces hostility, prevents escalation, and encourages constructive engagement. Noise often magnifies conflict by emphasizing difference. Empathy restores perspective by recognizing shared human experience. The age of noise will not disappear. Algorithms will continue to optimize engagement over truth. Popularity will continue to be rewarded. Viral mistakes will continue to spread. Emotion will continue to dominate perception. Yet individuals are not powerless. Awareness, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, humility, patience, reflection, and empathy provide a toolkit for navigating this world intentionally. Clarity is not a fixed state. It is a continuous practice. Every interaction, every choice, every reflection contributes to understanding. The path forward is not about winning arguments or silencing voices, it is about maintaining fidelity to truth, resisting manipulation, and cultivating perspective amidst the cacophony. Noise will always exist, but so will the possibility of insight. The age of noise does not have to dictate reality. Humans have the capacity to shape understanding, prioritize evidence, and preserve reason. By reclaiming clarity, we assert agency over perception, choose deliberation over reaction, and protect the integrity of thought in a world that often confuses volume with validity. The culmination of this journey reveals a fundamental truth: navigating noise is not about eliminating distraction or controlling information. It is about mastering the internal environment, our perceptions, emotions, and judgments. It is about creating mental spaces where reflection, discernment, and truth can flourish. It is about transforming external chaos into personal and collective clarity. In conclusion, the age of noise is both a challenge and an opportunity. It exposes the vulnerabilities of human perception, highlights the distortions of social systems, and accelerates the consequences of error. Yet it also illuminates the pathways to resilience, understanding, and truth. By cultivating awareness, critical thinking, patience, humility, reflection, and empathy, individuals can navigate the tumult, resist manipulation, and reclaim clarity. Noise is loud. Opinions are louder. Feelings often feel like facts. Virality, popularity, and polarization push perception to extremes. But clarity is possible. It requires effort, intention, and courage. It demands that we prioritize evidence over emotion, reflection over reaction, and understanding over performance. The age of noise is here. But clarity, discernment, and truth remain attainable for those willing to seek them, practice them, and protect them. And in a world that constantly shouts, the ability to listen, reflect, and understand may be the most powerful skill of all.